Plowman.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
7 present, 2 absent.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented? Seeing and hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Motion by Osmus, seconded by Plowman. Roll call. I'm sorry, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have consent items. Ms. Thompson, our city clerk.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, on tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the City Council minutes of February 22nd, the Wilmer Municipal Utilities Commission minutes of February 25th, Planning Commission minutes of January 19th and February 2nd, Parks and Recreation Board minutes of January 19th, Accounts Payable Report for February 17th through March 2nd, appointments to boards and commissions of Ryan Nelson to the Airport Commission, Jasmine Miller to the Planning Commission, Kent Skoglund to the Park and Recreation Board, Margaret Peggy Karsten to the Human Rights Commission, Heidi Jo Aman to the Human Rights Commission, and Abdirahman Hussan Abdi, or Kadar, to the Municipal Utilities Commission. An application for exempt permit from the Sertoma Club, a resolution for the removal of Khalif Basir from Planning Commission, a resolution for the Wilmer Township Fire Agreement, a resolution for the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council grant application, a squad car purchase for 2022, and for council's information, the council work session summary of January 31st.
Council, what do you wish to do?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent items. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
I just would like to seek clarification on on Jasmine Miller, not on her application, but just on the email that was submitted. Since it's the city of Olivia, we had a discussion last time about that being changed. I just wondered if it was.
Yes, that email has been changed to her personal email address. I did speak with the city administrator from Olivia, had a very long conversation with him. She is a very talented individual. She does great work for the city of Olivia. He was hoping and encouraged her to apply to be on our planning commission so that she would have experience on dealing and addressing issues larger than what probably would come before the city of Olivia. He spoke very highly of her. He was concerned that council may have thought that she was not a qualified candidate, and I said I didn't believe that that was the case. We had a long conversation. I think we exchanged probably 2 or 3 emails back and forth, and he is highly recommending that the council, if they so choose, allow her to proceed forward. And I know your only question was about her email address, but I thought it was good to add the additional part that has full support from the city of Olivia, and he viewed it as a simple, in her haste to get the application in, she just made a little misstep there, and he apologized on her behalf and said that he fully supported her. So I would hope that the council would move her forward also. She recently moved to Wilmer, and he actually encouraged her to move to Wilmer because there would be more opportunities in Wilmer for her family. She has a young family, and so they're actually living in Wilmer. So,
Thank you. I appreciate my only concern was the city of Olivia's email address. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Additional comments? Did you want to pull that, or did you want to go through? Okay. So with that, roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion that resolution passes. Councilmember O'Brien is saying that we're having trouble with the feed. Was he going to be on remote?
There is no remote set up for this evening.
Must be TV feed then.
Okay, can somebody check on the feed? He's saying that the feed's not working. So. Next, we'll have a hearing on the city's proposed redistricting presentation. Ms. Thompson. Roll call.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, tonight we are having a hearing to consider the proposed changes for redistricting due to the 2020 census numbers. And I just have a brief little overview for the mayor, the council, and members of the public and staff who are unfamiliar with the process. Redistricting is redrawing district boundaries to equalize representation following the decennial census all over the United States and Minnesota by legislators and local governments. What could be affected? Congressional districts, legislative districts, precincts, polling places, city wards, county commissioner districts, school board member districts, soil and water member districts. The redistricting timeline is February 15th, the legislative redistricting was complete. And February 23rd, we held a public informational meeting for city and county residents. Today, we are having the public hearing for the city redistricting. March 29th is the deadline for the city redistricting that it has to be completed. April 5th is a public hearing for the county redistricting. April 26th is the county schools southwest, the SWCD and park redistricting has to be completed. And May 17th, candidate filing begins for open offices for the 2022 elections. May 31st is the last day for candidates to file. August 9th is a primary election, and November 8th would be the general election. City governments must reestablish all precincts after state redistricting. Cities with wards must redistrict ward boundaries to ensure compliance with ward population equality and other legal requirements, and must make the ward's populations as equal as practicable. Wards must be drawn to satisfy statutory requirements for boundaries as well as population, and these requirements include that wards are bounded by precinct lines, wards are compact in area, and wards are composed of contiguous territory. They must be equal in population as practicable. The city must use the population counts that are certified by the U.S. Census Bureau and reflect the city's population as of April 1, 2020.
Ms. Thompson, we're going to take
Yes.
a recess. Council's in recess. Wilmer City Council meeting is back in session. We're having audio problems and we're trying to get them corrected. And so that's the reason why I stopped the meeting. So go ahead.
Okay. The next slide is the proposed numbers by precinct. Our 2010 population was 19,612. Our 2020 population came in at 21,015, which is an increase of 1,403 residents from 2010. And of the 21,015, 8,646 were non-white population. So we had a good turnout on our diverse population. The wards, as you can see, are fairly consistent with Ward 1 total population of 5,177, Ward 2 5,256, Ward 3 5,410, and Ward 4 5,172. And there is the comparison on the PowerPoint and what was included in the packet with the 2010 numbers for public to compare. As you can see, the wards are fairly equal in population to meet the statutory requirements. The proposed changes that we are recommending were to change, we took 203 people from Ward 3 and placed them into Ward 1, Precinct 2. And we took 81 people from Ward 3, Precinct 3, and placed them in Ward 2, Precinct 1. And this would complete my presentation, and I would stand for any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing and hearing none, I will take it to the council table. And council, what are your actions that you wish to do?
I make a motion to approve the precinct changes.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to adopt the changes as presented by staff. Discussion. Roll call.
Sorry, Councilmember Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution does pass. Ms. Thompson, thank you and your staff for the work that you did to make this happen. I know that you guys put a lot of hours into this, and I know you worked in cooperation with the county. And thank you for the work that you did. These numbers are really exciting. So
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also would like to thank all of those who helped with the census, our 2020 Complete Count Committee. I was fortunate to have a great group of people to work with who were very eager, and we got out and did the best we could given our circumstances with COVID. So thank you again.
You bet. And we had nobody sign up for open forum?
There was no one that signed up for open forum this evening.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll do the mayor's State of the City address. And so, good evening, council members, city staff, and citizens of Wilmer. Tonight, I would like to present the 2022 State of the City address. In 2021 has been a very prosperous year for the city of Wilmer, and tonight I will take the opportunity to look back and review some of those highlights. As we entered the year, we were met again with COVID concerns, and I wish to express my sincere appreciation to our citizens for once again stepping up and staying safe. Citizens had to manage the ever-changing CDC guidelines and our city ever-changing risk plans. Our staff also had to work within these changes, and we have persevered. We are stronger when we work together, and we are a resilient city. The city has also experienced several key leadership changes in 2021. City Administrator Valiant, Human Resources Director Sietsema, both came on board this past July. And our Planning and Development Director, Mr. Walker, joined our key city leadership team in October. With our new leaders, I believe that we are on the right path to continue reaching our goals and making improvements to our city. We have seen a few long-term employees retire and have had great applicants to replace these positions. The city continues to offer employment opportunities for several integral positions. In 2022, the city hired an accounting clerk, a building inspector, and the council has added the positions of rental housing inspector and city operations director. These positions fill a long overdue shortage in needs that we have to be an employer of choice. In addition to the city operations director was created to assist the city administrator in multiple capacities. This position has been talked about for over 8 years and is now within sight of being filled. We have had over 20 applicants, and Ms. Valiant will be bringing her recommendation to us in the next few weeks for our support. The rental housing inspector comes at the recommendation from our planning director and was established to assist with code compliance of various ordinance and related codes for nuisances, with primary responsibility to inspect and license the over 3,500 rental units we have within the city of Wilmer. For our current city employees, the City Council approved an employee wellness program beginning in 2022 with opportunities for employees to engage in healthy options for exercise, nutrition, stress management, and other opportunities to improve their well-being. Our Park and Recreations Department strives to enhance and maintain the robust amount of parks and trail systems within the city of Wilmer. The department offers a variety of year-round activities and programs for all ages. At the Wilmer Community Center, you will find arts and crafts, cooking classes, group games, entertainment, and much, much more. Adult and youth recreation provides a wide array of activities throughout the whole year, from soccer, football, volleyball, and tennis, and to family events like kayaking, ice skating, and many, many more opportunities. There is always something for our citizens to participate, so roll up your sleeves and try a new offering within our Park and Recreation Department. We are excited to see the completion of the Invest in Wilmer projects utilizing our new spaces to their fullest. These enhancements will allow the city to run additional programming, rent more space, and provide more family opportunities within our community. Most of the projects identified within the local option sales tax projects are well within their way to fruition. Citizens should be able to see the benefits with new shelters at Robbins Island, field improvements at Swanson Field, along with 2 new turf fields near the Recreation Center, which is currently under construction. In conjunction with these recreational facilities, staff continues to work on stormwater challenges and an improved community center. Thank you to the citizens of Wilmer for making these aspirations a reality. An extended thank you as well to the individuals who volunteered their time working our local option sales tax projects. This was no small undertaking. And as we look forward to 2022, we can look forward to continued opportunities for success. Council will now work alongside our staff to complete as many of these projects as the community wishes. We continue to see growth in our open and welcome diverse communities. The 2020 census showed a total population of 21,015, which is an increase of 1,403 people from the 2010 census. Wilmer is a diverse community that continues to strive in development. Our diversity is a strength that I am proud of, and one that has brought a stable workforce and increased housing opportunities. As housing continues to be a major concern, we are happy to report the continued construction of 4 buildings in our unique apartments, offering a total of 288 units. 2 of the 4 buildings are currently open, and the remaining 2 have begun construction. Block 25 is the first major development in the downtown Renaissance zone. It is a 4-story multifamily housing project that will add an additional 57 units to our downtown housing stock. This project recently closed and construction is set to begin this spring. The Preserve on 24th project was our first major housing development in the general business district just southwest of Walmart on 5th Street and 24th Avenue Southeast. This project will add an additional 108 market rate apartments to Wilmer's housing stock. Construction has already started on this project with plans to be open by the spring of 2023. In economic development, the Fedex Regional Distribution Center project adds another major tenant to our industrial park. Fedex has already broken ground on this $25 million project that will add over 200 jobs to Wilmer. Construction should continue through this summer. The Wilmer Poultry project included the city sale of land near the wastewater treatment plant to allow Wilmer Poultry to expand its hatchery facility. This project will help us cement Wilmer as being on the cutting edge of the turkey and poultry innovations within our country. Street reconstruction of our streets and infrastructure continues to be a key issue for the city. In 2021, about 1 mile of streets were either partially or fully reconstructed and a half a mile of overlay. Staff is working in conjunction with this council to find ways to increase and fund the amount of streets being improved while remaining fiscally responsible to our citizens. Council will be receiving an updated street plan over the next few months in preparing for the 2023 city budget. We can solve our street problems, but it will take all of us working together to make this happen. Before concluding, I want to say a special thank you to our city staff. and to the City Council for all that you have done to make this a safe, strong, and vibrant city. It is through your dedication that we can continue to do what is best for the city. As I look forward to 2022, we're in a strong position with numerous development opportunities in front of us. We will be adding jobs, housing, and improving our infrastructure. Together, we can make Wilmer an even stronger regional center. The future of Wilmer is very bright. I look forward to a successful and prosperous 2022. In my conclusion, I am announcing to the citizens of Wilmer that I will not seek re-election as your mayor. I have enjoyed my 8 years and made a commitment to you that I will only serve 2 terms, and I will keep my word. I will work alongside any candidate that wishes to have conversations on how to continue down the paths we are with Wilmer. Thank you all, and may God continue to bless the city of Wilmer. Thank you. Next, we will have a consideration of an ordinance for a hearing repealing existing ward boundaries and establishment. Oh, we already did that. We're a step ahead of ourselves.
It was unclear.
Mr. Scott?
Yep, Mayor, Council, there was a motion to, I think, generally support the redistricting that City Clerk Thompson presented. I do still think you need to take a motion to introduce the ordinance as the next agenda item contemplates.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to introduce an ordinance for a hearing repealing the existing ward boundaries and establishing new ward boundaries by resolution. That's right, that's got a holdover for so many days, right? Till the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Osk. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osk.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Next, we'll have the US Highway 12 preliminary design presentation from members of MnDOT.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I'm Philip DeShepard, engineer at MnDOT and the project manager on the Trunk Highway 12 project. It is a 2027 project, but there are some unique items that we would like to present to the council. Project scope, the project goes from 11th Street Southwest to 6th Street Southeast, so the Jenny-O Bridge to the old Domino's. The project is scoped to be a pavement preservation project. So each end, west end and east end, will be a concrete pavement rehab, and then the middle will be a mill and overlay with ADA improvements throughout. But I guess one thing with this project is, I might be getting a little ahead of myself here, but in 2014, the city, the county, and the state did a Highway 12 corridor vision study. So we hired a consultant, Sambatech, and they hired SRF to do the traffic analysis, just to make sure everything aligns with that 2014 corridor vision. So our next steps here, they analyzed the traffic, and then we'll just go ahead and show you what we came up with that. And then at the end, we would like direction from the city if they'd like to go with the 3-lane concept or stay with how it is currently with the 4 lanes. The main purpose of this project is to rehabilitate the driving surface of US 12 from just west of 11th Street to 6th Street Southeast. And then sidewalks will be just where they're non-compliant. They'll be reconstructed to ADA standards. And like I said, we hired Sambatech. Dan can't be here tonight, but we do have Leif Garnis with SRF. And then on the bottom is a picture how it could look in the 3-lane typical section. We would keep the 4-lane where we have the raised concrete median though. And I'll turn it over to Leif. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Philip, and thanks, Mr. Mayor and council members and city staff. As Philip mentioned, as MnDOT is moving forward with this project on Highway 12, a pavement rehab project, there are opportunities for us to consider what this would look like moving forward. A key concept here for this project is a 3-lane concept on US 12. So in the lower left-hand part of the screen here, on the left side, we have an image of what it looks like today, where we have essentially 2 lanes in each direction along the highway. On the right next to it is a 3-lane concept, which is essentially where we take 2 of those lanes and convert them into a center turn lane. So as part of this pavement project, we have the opportunity to repurpose the pavement that's out there and implement a 3-lane roadway if we desire to do that. The key area for where this concept would be implemented is from the western side, 10th Street, 11th Street, all the way to the east through 2nd and 3rd. As Philip mentioned, work has been done on this corridor to take a look at these different opportunities. In 2014, the city partnered with the DOT to look at opportunities for the roadway. A couple of recommendations that came out of that study, one being to make this transition into more of that uniform 3-lane highway. The study produced some information relative to the fact that this is a low-cost conversion that can take place as part of a project that MnDOT's doing to help address any pedestrian and bicycle concerns, address some safety concerns, and essentially to help promote that safe and efficient flow of traffic, which is where our work comes in to really understand, can we implement this with the traffic that exists today as well as into the future. More recently, in 2020, the DOT completed a pedestrian and bicycle scoping recommendation report, and a couple key findings from that report is that, one, this stretch of the corridor does lack facilities for non-motorized users, so walkers and bikers, more importantly, have challenges trying to cross Highway 12, and so with this concept, we have opportunities to improve that. And then ultimately, similar to the 2014 report, the 2020 report also recommended making this conversion to the 3-lane roadway. A big question here is traffic and how do we accommodate traffic with the conversion here. So what we look at here when we evaluate the traffic is really, how long are people waiting at the intersections, and does that change if we make a change in the roadway? Not only that, but if you're traveling from one end of the corridor through the other. So we look at what it means to be at an intersection, but also what it means to make that travel. We'll talk about it here a little bit later with some graphics, but when we look at intersections, we essentially give them a letter grade, A through F. Just like in school, A is good, F, not so good. So we use that as a comparison to understand what it is today and how it would change in the future with these changes. One thing I did want to mention too is that we did look at it today with existing traffic levels, but also what does it mean when this project would open, roughly around 2027, and then more importantly in the future, 20 years from there, and really trying to understand, are we making a change that's going to be adequate for the long term? The first step in that is for us to just look at a daily level what's happening along the corridor. What you see on the screen here with the blue bar charts is the traffic levels that are out there today, so just below the 10,000 vehicles per day. What we did was look at, well, what does that mean in the future? With the future, we see just over that 10,000. But what's important to look at this chart here are the 2 green bars up on the top. The top one is what we call the capacity of the roadway today. So that's how much can this roadway handle based on the way it's set up. The green line below that is the 3-lane roadway. So obviously if we're taking away a lane in each direction, there is some reduction in the amount of traffic we can handle here. But what you can see here is that we still have a lot of extra room to grow with the traffic levels under either a 3-lane roadway or what's out there today. Again, getting back to now the intersection level, understanding what it means for how much time people have to wait at intersections. What we found here through this evaluation was at the worst case scenario here, we saw about 2 seconds of increase in wait time. So not a big change in 2040. The intersection where we saw the most is at 7th Street, which is one of the busiest intersections on Highway 12. The other thing I want to note here too is on at intersections where there isn't a traffic light. So 7th Street has a traffic light. 9th Street, for example, doesn't. So if you're on one of the side streets wanting to either cross over Highway 12 or turn onto Highway 12, now that you take away a lane in each direction, more traffic is going to be funneled into that one lane. So there could be a potential for that wait time to increase. Again, we saw that as just a really minor increase in travel times. So what we see from a traffic perspective, both at the daily level as well as during those peak hour conditions, the morning and afternoon peak, is not a big change in delays or wait times. And then just to look here to illustrate it, down at the bottom, we've got the grading scale I was talking about with level service A through F, with A being good, F being poor. What you can see is that most of the intersections, whether it's today, in that near-term future, or even in the distant future, under either today's 4-lane roadway or the future 3-lane roadway, a lot of acceptable operations or really low wait times for drivers, and we don't anticipate that getting much worse, if any. Similarly, in the afternoon, again, not any major increases from our perspective that would cause us any concerns with making changes to this 3-lane. As I mentioned, the other piece is how long does it take for drivers to go from one end of the corridor to the other? We know this is a busy corridor for commuters as well as trucks, and so we wanted to see what does that mean? And what we found is, looking at today and into the future, less than 10 seconds overall for drivers to go from one end to the other. So from today into the future, we see it only increase in about 10 seconds or less. Safety considerations. This is another thing we want to look at relative to the benefits that can come with a 3-lane concept. So just briefly here, we did look at what is occurring historically. So from 2015 through 2019, we found that about 50 reported intersection-related crashes, but more importantly, 25 reported non-intersection-related crashes. And when we compare this to other roadways within the state that are similar, so a 4-lane roadway with no turn lanes, this is much higher than what we would expect it to be for this type of roadway compared to others. Good news is the crashes that we have been seeing, none of them are extremely severe, so that's good news. But we do see this as an opportunity for us to make some changes. The one thing I would note here is that the crashes that have been occurring along the roadway, so not at intersections, but along in between the intersections, were either rear end crashes, side swipe crashes, or run off the road. What we see in these cases is if a driver's stopping to make a left turn and either into one of the side streets or into one of the businesses, and a driver doesn't expect them to, they're going to dart off one way or the other to try to avoid that. Hopefully avoid it, but that also can create crashes as well. So just some benefits we see with the safety of a 3-lane conversion, and I do have some graphics to illustrate my 4 bullet points here. But first and foremost, I talked about those drivers that are stopping in that inside lane trying to make a left turn. What this does is it removes those out of the situation here, so we reduce that opportunity for people to have rear end crashes. Also, side swipe crashes were one of the prominent ones here. With these 2 lanes now not having side-by-side traffic, we see that side swipe crashes can go down. And then one of the pieces of information that we gathered through reviewing the previous work as well as meetings with city staff is that residents and drivers are concerned about making left turns at some of the lights and not being able to see around the cars that are waiting to make a left turn that are opposing them. So again, these are things that we can address with a 3-lane. And then lastly, I did want to note that if you are in the side street, we talked earlier about it might take you a little bit longer to cross or make a turn, but now you are managing to deal with less lanes of traffic, or you have to cross less lanes of traffic. So it does address safety concerns there. So just a couple graphics here to illustrate those bullet points. On the left is the comparison, what I talked about with the drivers either trying to stop in that left lane to make a left turn versus drivers either rear-ending them or trying to dart away from them. To the right of that is the 3-lane, and you can see that situation disappears. On the upper right part of the screen here is that a situation if you're a driver trying to cross over Highway 12. Under today's conditions, you have 16 different potential conflict points, or 4 if you're going in one direction, and that would drop down to 2. And then the lower right illustrates what I was explaining as far as the drivers having difficulty seeing around other drivers in that other lane, if they are head-on with drivers that are wanting to make a left turn, it's easier for them to see those oncoming drivers. I mentioned truck considerations. We also had discussions on what this means for trucks. We did look at, through our traffic data collection efforts, and understand how trucks travel through the downtown area. What we found is that most trucks are traveling through, but at 2nd, 7th, and 11th, that's where we see most trucks making their turns. Some feedback we also got is that trucks making their turns, sometimes they have to off-track or they have to shift to a different lane to make their movements, especially through the S-curve down by just east of 7th Street. With this three-lane roadway, this situation now goes away, essentially, because we have one lane of traffic for the drivers, we have extra space because we have the center turn lanes, and then we have some additional shoulder or whatever use we want to use with that extra pavement. So we are giving trucks extra space to make those turns, through the S-curve, but also at the intersections. Now that drivers or trucks are making a turn a little bit closer to that center of the roadway, gives them a little bit more space to make those right turns. Real important if you have folks standing on the corner wanting to cross the street. So opportunities available with the conversion. Our key information tonight is what we found relative to traffic safety, trucks, but also if we were to move forward with this, are additional opportunities that we can consider. The first one is pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. When we do a three-lane roadway, a couple things we can look at is, one, at the intersections, we can shorten up that distance walkers have to cross the street, improves the safety for walkers. If there's a desire to consider bicycle travel or opportunities to introduce bicycles, that's also can be considered as part of a three-lane roadway. Access management is something also we can consider. These are things that we will consider as if we move forward with the three-lane concept. And what we're looking for here this evening is confirmation that we should further develop that layout in that project for a three-lane scenario. So before I close here, I just wanted to hit on next steps. So today, March here, we're seeking support from the city to move forward with either the current four-lane concept or with a three-lane concept. Next couple months here, we will be developing the layout for that, so painting that pretty picture of what it would look like, as well as if we decide to advance that three-lane concept forward, what are the different opportunities we want to include in that. Earlier this summer, we will be engaging the public and area stakeholders as we start to better understand what this project could be and when expected changes could happen, depending on what option is selected. Towards the end of the summer, then get that picture of the project finalized, and then work with the city here late summer to get this approved so it can be implemented here in 2023. So that concludes our presentation on the preliminary design for US 12. Any questions?
Yes. Calling them?
Yes. So thank you for your presentation. I'm sure council will have a number of questions, and then if they don't hit all of mine, I will ask you for some comments on what questions I have as well. Councilmember Rasmus.
Okay, I'm primarily looking at 7th and 10th Street, left-hand turns. Would there be the opportunity for any left turn arrows, or is it going to be a yield on the green lights? Presently, the 2nd and 3rd Street West have that left turn arrow. But that seems to be one of the biggest issues, is the traffic that gets backed up, not being able to get that left turn in.
So yes, as part of the three-lane concept, that will be considered. We haven't decided one way or the other if we'd move forward with that, but if we have the three-lane concept where we have that center turn lane, which is essentially dedicated for those drivers, it does allow us the opportunity to have an arrow if the traffic determines that we need to.
Would that be after it's, if you go ahead with the 3-lane, that wouldn't be right away then? There would be a traffic study to determine if there's enough.
We would
left-turn
answer that
traffic?
question as part of the layout. So
Okay.
what if we move forward with the three-lane concept, the way we control those intersections would be part of that layout and that plan. So day one, when it gets built, it would be what it is we decide. Yep.
Comments or questions? Councilmember Nelson, followed by Davis.
Thank you. I would be supportive of the 3-lane concept. I'm a regular on 7th and Highway 12, and I would say there are a lot of people who choose when you have a semi coming around the curve not to make your left turn, but to go down further to figure out where you can make your left turn. And also from a biking standpoint and a walking standpoint, I think some of the things you're considering would be very helpful to figure out is 7th Street or 10th Street or where those biking would be. From a traffic standpoint, I think it maybe even evens out the traffic versus 4 lanes going to, back and forth. So I appreciate the work that you've done, and in my mind, I am supportive of the 3-lane concept.
Councilmember Davis.
Just curious, so for the center lane, for instance, when I turn off a 19th to go home, I go down the center lane and make my turn, but sometimes there's cars coming the opposite way to turn the other way, so then you have to kind of slow down and figure out. Is there any area on here where it would be like that with 3-lane?
Yes, there are areas where that could occur. That is part of our next step if we decide to advance a 3-lane, is identify, locations where we, could maybe put a median or something in there to restrict that from happening, to make sure we don't get that overlap. What we did see in looking at the traffic counts is the intersections are really where most of the drivers are making their turns. So we definitely take that into consideration. Some intersections we're seeing, less turning vehicles. So we'll have to take that into consideration, but we haven't taken it to that step yet, not knowing if the city wanted to support a 3-lane, but again, it's part of the opportunities that we can look at.
Okay.
Councilmember Osk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen, for the work you've done. I appreciate the focus on safety, which I think we all agree is a top priority, but also efficiency. And as Councilmember Nelson mentioned earlier, for bicycles and pedestrians as well. So I tend to be supportive of the 3-lane as well. I'm wondering, though, the table you've given us here, the analysis of the conversion for the peak traffic considerations. I tend to be someone that likes A's and B's on my report card, right? So should I be satisfied with the C that we're going to get in the future on 11th Street and 9th Street? And if I'm not satisfied with the C, what are some other alternatives there to bring our grade up?
Sure. So first of all, yes, we can be satisfied with C's, even in school. In this case, most of the time, D is really that threshold for where we say, okay, let's look at this a lot closer if we need to make any changes there. In some instances, we can look at different opportunities to restrict certain movements at intersections, the ones that are causing or experiencing those longer wait times. Most of the time, it's the left turners trying to make a left turn onto the highway. Those are the ones that experience the most wait time. So there are opportunities similar to the question here regarding access and what we can do there. At the intersections themselves, the left turn lights is something that can help as well to reduce those times. The longer or the quicker we can get drivers through that intersection without having to wait, overall we're going to see that wait time go down. So that, yes, there are opportunities to address that.
Okay, I have a couple questions. So first off, you had that one picture that kind of showed the corridor. Can you go back to that picture? I'm a little bit concerned. I think that's it right there, right. So I'm a little bit concerned about bicycle and pedestrian traffic as it relates to 7th Street Southwest, and then I believe it's over to, what's the one where you turn to go to Fatty Daddy's the other way?
Oh,
3rd Street.
Dolson? Over to Dolson.
Over there.
And so I'm concerned through that corridor that with the traffic that we'll be putting there, I really think that we need to look at moving that traffic onto city streets. And if we move that onto Litchfield Avenue through there, and then if we do that, is there any opportunity for any credits to come back to the city for either our biking and our pedestrian travels? And the reason why I bring that up is through those corridors, and particularly where the retaining wall sits on the north side right after we're coming out of where the controlled median is at. I really think that really leads us to put pedestrians and bikes into traffic patterns that give them no escape. If we have them on, I'll call it the north side of the street, and I know that runs at an angle, so it's not truly north, but on the north side of the street, they do have an opportunity to clearly exit. But if they're on the south side of the street through that retaining wall piece, there's no place for them to exit once they enter that approximately half block distance of travel. So that's two concerns I have. And then the request I have is there some credits that we can get to come back to that? And I don't know if you guys have answers to those questions or not. And then I have one more question, one more comment as well. So
You want me to
go now.
Sure. Okay, we don't have credits. I think MnDOT's goal is to close gaps in the ADA network. You know, they want complete sidewalks and through the corridor. So I talked to our ADA guy in Wilmer. He said more than likely we will update the sidewalk through the whole corridor. I think what we could do is at Litchfield Avenue on the west side, you know, where 12 curves and meets Litchfield, we could kind of try and do something, you know, where the city could promote, you know, the pedestrian traffic to downtown. But otherwise, I think MnDOT will do the sidewalk on 12, and then, you know, we won't remove that section or provide credits to upgrade Litchfield through the city.
I don't like that answer. I mean, we're putting our pedestrians and our bikes in an unsafe, untenable situation, particularly through that short stretch that I talked about. I'm supportive of the 3-lane. I think the 3-lane is the way to go. I think there's a lot of good things that can be done there. And then the other thing that I'd like you guys to possibly consider, or maybe for the council to consider also, is on 3rd Street Southwest. We currently have that as a semaphore, and my understanding is that used to be the entrance to the emergency room. I go back a few years, and I remember running the ambulance back in the day, and that's how we got into the hospital. Now that corridor to get into that is actually off of 2nd Street. They moved the ER entrance after that reconstruction, and I believe it was in the early 2000s. And so I would like the council to consider if we could, if MnDOT would be amicable to closing that 2nd Street to make that a right turn only, and then eliminating that light, simply because what that allows us to do in a number of those crashes that have happened are on that right turn or left turn coming out of, so the trucks.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Somebody got into our meeting. So to take that piece, because when the trucks are coming up out of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe yard, they're coming up a hill there. And if they want to take a left, you know, they kind of have to have a head of steam to get in there. If that light is changing, you know, they're going to continue going, particularly when they're pulling trucks, particularly when they're pulling the stuff that they put on the roads to keep the dust down. And that's only generally in the spring that happens. But if we had those as right turn only, I think we could really eliminate a lot of conflict there. So those are some comments I have. I do support the three lane concept over the 4-lane. I think that the times are acceptable times, but I think we really need to look at allowing our pedestrians and bicycles to have safe areas to where they could mitigate that and not put them in an untenable situation, particularly up against that retaining wall. Additional comments from council. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I think that the mayor brings up some good points with that. That sidewalk is currently closed, and I don't know how you're going to find space to do that. And so my question, the reverse side is, are there anything the city should be doing? Is this an opportunity for us to do something in addition to what you're doing to enhance that? And so I'm just curious. I know we talked about, bike crossings like at 10th Street versus 7th Street versus some of those. So I'm just curious if you've come up with anything else that you think closing a street or, entrance or those types of things over on the east side there. I'm just wondering what you're thinking.
I don't have a lot of info on that, but I guess for the sidewalks, moving ahead, the plan is we'll do an ADA field walk with the ADA office. So we'll come out, and I think that at that time we'll see some of the, deficiencies that the sidewalk have and what we can do, to make it ADA compliant. Like I've said before, too, that retaining wall by Dolson over there, or Litchfield, that's supposed to be replaced this summer. I haven't seen any plans on it yet, but when I do, I can share them with Leslie. But and then access control is always a thing too. The district, we'll seek opportunities where we can close access. Closing streets, I'm not too sure that'll happen. We can look at the 3rd Street of the right in, right out. Also, the intersections, they'll get the ICE evaluation to make sure the stoplights or the signals are still warranted. So you have good questions, and some of this will come out through the process.
We just want to make sure they don't get dropped. Additional comments or questions? Thank you for your presentation. I don't believe you're looking for you're looking for action. So they're looking for action for the council to support the 3-lane concept or support the 4-lane concept. From what I've heard from the comments made this evening, it appears that the 3-lane is the preferred by 4 members that spoke, 5 members, including myself. So is there someone that wishes to make a motion?
I can make a motion to offer a letter of support from the city to pursue the 3-lane option, resulting in a design layout that subsequently requires municipal consent.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'm not sure who made the second. Did you get it? Okay. Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You were for it, correct?
Yeah.
All were for it. Motion does carry. Thank you for your work, and we look forward to it. I just implore you to come back and not have an untenable situation for our walkers and bikers. Please.
Yeah, with the municipal consent here, there'll be a lot of involvement with the city of Wilmer, so we'll keep you up to date.
Thank you. Work with Ms. Valiant on that, so appreciate that. Next, we have consideration of the Harlan-Roner rezone, and this is being coming to us from the Planning Commission. Mr. Walker. We'll have Mr. Walker open it, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll eat this.
I'm just looking for the introduction on what we're going to talk about, and then you can do your presentation later.
Okay, yeah.
I'm looking for an overall, just an introduction.
All right, yeah. So,
Page 125 for the council.
yep. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So, this kind of been working through. I think it's been working its way through the planning department for better part of a year now. I think the overall process. I think the process of map amendment to the zoning map was introduced late last fall prior to my arrival. And so we went with the map amendment process, and it's worked its way through the Planning Commission, and now it is here before you at the request of the applicant. And so I guess we'll have the applicant talk, and then we'll also I'll present of like what the timeline is, how the process normally goes, and things like that. So for clarification of the timeline and all the events that have transpired throughout the process.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'm Wayne Larson. I'm representing Harlan Roner, who is here. And also who are here are the tenants who would operate the grocery store that they would like to operate in the location that we're talking about for a rezone. You have a letter from Crystal Dolliger of our office, and that outlines what the process has been for the application. Started out as a conditional use application that couldn't be accomplished, and so it then became a rezone. If you look at, this is Exhibit A in the letter that you received. In Exhibit A, there's a whiteout area here. That whiteout area is what used to be Highway 12. Highway 12, when it was relocated and the cul-de-sac was added, which is right there, then the whiteout was vacated, or it's not a road anymore. The property that Mr. Roner has is right here, and access to his property is up 5th Street, and then on what was the old Highway 12, he'll go to the east and enters his property, which is right there. This is map C, which was on the letter that was sent. This is a page from the city's zoning map, and the color is better here, so I'm using this at this point. This is Mr. Roner's property right there. There's this property right here, which is red. The present zone for Mr. Roner's property is general industrial, and what he is asking is that it be rezoned to general business. Now, the red up here is a general business zone. That's the west, the gas station, the liquor store, and the market, the West End Market. The property, and the reason that we really think that a rezone is appropriate is because this is a most unusual location. If you go out there and look at the property, Mr. Roner's property is here. The property to the east and south between what was the old Highway 12 and the new Highway 12, it's a city-owned property and his. Across the street is the industrial West Central Steel. Across the street from that is the cemetery. To the west is the grocery store, liquor store, and gas station. And then there's Miller's repair service in there. There is so much different businesses in this particular area. It really seems to me as though this is kind of a one in the city, one opportunity to allow this to be rezoned so that it can be used for the grocery store. The tenants, in fact, have worked in the store, in the building. The grocery store is ready to open. It's stocked and ready to go. The Planning Commission, we met with them. The letter that Crystal sent outlines the process that we went through. At the Planning Commission meeting, though, when they did take action, there was a motion to grant the rezone and a second. And there were 6 members at the meeting at that time, and those 2 voted for it, and then 4 voted against it. And that is the recommendation from the Planning Commission to the council. Because of the unusual character of this area, particularly with the relocation of Highway 12. We really think that to rezone this is not going to have an adverse effect in that area. There are no property owners. They've received notice several times, but no property owners objected at the hearings that were held, and there were no written objections filed. So the only objection that we see is, I think that the planning office of the city has an objection to spot zoning. But I really think that because of the relocation of Highway 12, the old Highway 12, the railroad tracks that are right there, I don't think that this would be typically a spot zoning. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask of Mr. Rohner or of the tenants of the grocery store that would like to operate that store, they're here and they're willing to answer any questions you might have.
Council, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Rohner? I don't believe we have, Mr. Larson.
Okay.
How about for the tenant? Does anybody have any question for the tenant? I don't see any at this time.
All right,
Thank you for your presentation.
thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Oh, I was just gonna. Can I just open it?
X.
Okay. All right, so this is just going to be like an account of some, I think, like responses to some of the things that were in the letter that you all received, and this will also be a clarification on some of the timeline that was kind of outlined in the letter as well. So timeline prior to the planning commission, May 1st, lease is signed between the property owner and the tenant. June 28th, variance application is filed with the city, and I think that's one of the major things. As Mr. Larson said tonight, that it was a conditional use permit, and I think in the letter it also said that it was a conditional use permit that was filed. That is incorrect. It was a variance application that was filed. It was an invalid variance application that was filed and accepted. It's in the packet for you all to look at. And so then on July 21st, there was a use complaint made with the department by a former employee, just kind of wondering like, hey, I don't know if you guys know about this, but this probably shouldn't be here. I think this is a conflict of uses. You guys should look at that. And so that kind of started the process of kind of looking at what was going on, trying to get to the bottom of, was there any permits for this? Who knows, like what was going on? And then September 24th, a BZA meeting to hear the variance application is canceled. And so that's another major point as well. It was pointed out in the letter that a member of staff simply forgot a planning commission meeting, and that is untrue. It was a BZA meeting that was canceled, and the landlord, I guess the applicant, was notified within the time.
Mr. Walker, BZA is a Board of Zoning Appeals, correct?
Correct, yeah, Board of Zoning Appeals. And so the Board of Zoning Appeals exclusively hears variances, not the Planning Commission. And so it was a Board of Zoning Appeal meeting that was canceled, not forgotten. I think that is very important to clarify that it was a canceled meeting that was canceled within the legal time, within the legal time frame, with the 4 days prior to the September 28th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. And so,
Just a minute, Mr. Walker.
yep.
May I ask, canceled by whom?
Yeah, so it was canceled by staff.
I believe the variance request was an invalid request, is why they canceled it.
Yep. So it was canceled because due to the variance application here, as it reads, The Board of Appeals and adjustments of the governing body, as the case may be, may not permit as a variance any use that is not allowed under the zoning ordinance for property in the zone where the affected person's land is located. So use variances are not allowed by state statute, not up to the discretion of staff, not up to the discretion of another body, not allowed by state statute. And so the variance application never should have been accepted, and we should have been at the map amendment process sooner. All right. So then in the letter, it kind of talks about mixed zones, kind of how Mr. Larson kind of pointed out tonight. So the natural boundary that kind of exists between Mr. Roner's property and the other industrial, I guess across the highway of where West Central Steel is and like where it's mentioned that the grocery store is, there's really kind of, so it's the natural barriers of the railroad and Highway 12. Highway 12 has been relocated, but with the railroads still existing there. Normally, when you go through zoning towns or when you go through zoning, oftentimes you see these natural barriers serve as highways, or maybe they're railroads or like other, I guess, natural resources per se. And then to address that, the city-owned is like mixed zoning as like it's city-owned land and residential land. I'd say it's a bit of a misnomer. So next to it, that's purple. I guess it's technically it could be anything, but just to be very clear about how, like, what the development pattern is and what potential projects are in the city, that will be industrial land. And then to the west of it, the residential side of it, that was existing prior to when it was annexed. And so with knowledge of what is going on in the industrial park and the expansion of the industrial park, the purple is really just waiting to be industrial. And so then, like I said, and then everything across the highway just kind of serves as a natural barrier for the zoning. And I think, just is like, so if there was anything going forward, I think of kind of looking at a study of like what it would need to be rezoned to, it would probably just conform to what was already there. I think like what's already going to get there. And I think that's, like I said, going to be industrial, not really any doubt about it in my mind. And then I think, so I just want to kind of clarify like what the typical planning process normally is. And so normally like staff, we field a lot of questions, I think through phone calls to people coming in, walk-ins. They want to know what their property is zoned as. And I think oftentimes like you see the process of going through a realtor. And so a lot of times like we have real estate agents that call us like, hey, I have an end user who's interested in X, like would this work here? Can I have apartments here? Can I have this here? And we really kind of have a process. We really kind of have a conversation about how that would go, what we think, scale, kind of size, like, oh, like what would I need? Really just kind of going through the process. And so to anybody kind of interested in starting a business in Wilmer or kind of buying land in Wilmer, I highly recommend verifying your zoning, working through like the proper channels, and I think identifying the applicable process. I think that's another major thing. I think we had something today where it was, we're kind of waiting on approvals on some things. These things should be signed off, and we found out that it never went through the proper plan review process. And so then all of a sudden you're at the end of the process and you're waiting on permits, but then like your process could get extended out another 4 to 6 weeks just because you didn't know the proper process that was to be followed. And then I think the filing relevant forms, like I think in this situation with the variance application instead of like the conditional use permit and not really knowing what the process was to get the proper outcome or the outcome that you were seeking, I think that's also a very, very relevant thing. And I think that's one of the things that staff really kind of helps people with throughout the process. And then I think the deadlines, we have like a lot of rolling deadlines with meetings that are either bi-weekly or monthly. And then you got to figure out, well, do I have to go to the council? Do I not have to go to the council? And then certain months, like I think March, where it's an alternating week of a council meeting and a planning commission meeting. And then in April, where like the planning commission meeting is the same week of the council meeting. So just kind of things like that, kind of being aware of those. And then I think appear the necessary meetings. I know like in the planning commission, like we've recently changed our standards requiring preliminary hearings and also kind of requiring the property owners to be there as well, not just people working with the project. I think that's one of the things. So these are just the planning process and kind of how it went. And I think in this situation, I think due to staff turnover, unfamiliarity with some things, that just was not followed. And so then I think going forward, I think on the staff side, I think one of the things that I intend to make a priority will be more educational outreach, not just through online postings and things like that. I think we're going to really kind of sit down once we kind of get the workload figured out with bringing on the new rental housing inspector. We now have the building official and the building inspector, and myself and 2 planners on staff, essentially, that we really do feel that we'll be able to meet the need of the educational outreach and ensuring that this does not happen again. I think some things are it really is an institutional knowledge issue of, you don't know some of the permits that you need. You don't know some of the approvals that you need or what these timelines are, how some of these things work. And so I think going forward, I think it is our job as a staff to meet those needs and kind of bridge that gap as a department and really kind of be proactive about reaching out to people and kind of partnering with more organizations beyond the EDC. I think right now we have an established relationship with the EDC and they run a really great program. I think we have to look out into the community and find other organizations that are also working with budding entrepreneurs and getting in front of them and letting them know what the process is to hopefully clarify some of the confusion. And I think kind of take some of those things out of the black box and just kind of let people know what to expect and what they can expect from staff and like what their expectations can be and like the best locations for sites and things like that. We'd be happy to help. So.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yep.
So let me just surmise what I heard you say is that, and this is from my own, and hopefully to help the council too, but basically we had an application, we had a lease that was put in place prior to any formal review by staff. We did have some possibly times when staff maybe was going through transition, so maybe we didn't get back with them as quickly as we could have. But also at the conclusion of all of the analysis that was done is that this would be spot zoning simply because it's viewed that this will be industrial, and then the barrier being the railroad tracks, and then County Road 5 as those barriers. Is that kind of a good synopsis? Oh, and then on the south side of it would be that navigational water.
Correct.
Okay. Council, this is before us to take a look at and see if, and again, it came out of Planning Commission on a 2-4 vote, with 6 members in attendance. We did not have a full Planning Commission at the time. And so I believe that our staff did the work that they were asked to do, but there were some gaps in timing, not only on staff side, but also on the applicant side. So Councilmember Osmus.
Just to break it down a little bit more, to clarify. So Mr. Roner owned the land. He signed a lease with Miss 2 for a grocery store, which it was not zoned for. Correct?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then there was no conversation with the city about whether or not a grocery store could be there. And there was no conversation with economic development to help with the process of starting a business there.
Correct. I think so the first contact to the city of record is in June, late June. And the lease was executed May 1st.
Okay. So what you're saying as far as moving forward, how do we not have this happen again, to educate? Because the way I see it, Miss 2 is the one who is out the money on a lease and putting all of her equipment into this place when it never could be or was not zoned as a grocery store.
I think so I want us to focus on the rezone.
Okay.
Not focus on what we're going to do in the future, but let's focus on the rezone at this point.
Okay. I'm just looking at, I don't want to see this happen again.
Right.
So you're saying good partnership with EDC, more education to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, certainly. I think kind of finding other stakeholders in the community that can speak for the emerging new American population and some of the other immigrant populations who want to be first generation business owners or second generation business owners, and can really kind of help them through the business process. I think we've had other issues in the past where people thought, I have all the approvals from the state, not realizing that their approvals from the state are dependent upon approvals from the city, or knowing that, oh, well, gave you a drawing and it's like, no, we need an architect stamp. Like you drawing something on a piece of paper does not work. I think this has been more of a trend, and I think just really just kind of speaks to the level of diversity that we have in Wilmer, and that we need to be more accessible and more proactive about addressing this problem and bridging this gap in the community to make sure that we have the most vibrant business population in West Central Minnesota.
Okay, so back to the zoning part then. As the mayor pointed out, it is going to be industrial, all of that area around it. It doesn't make sense to make it the business.
No, not at all. And I think the other thing about the general business district is that if you look through it, there's like a smattering of like 4 archetypes in the general business. It's just kind of a place where they just kind of threw things that they wanted to have. So if it has an aspect of retail, it's in there, no matter if it's the scale of it or the use of it. And so it really kind of breaks down that there is like a industrial lean in the industrial park. And so I think like eventually we will break out the industrial park, and it probably will become 3 separate zones itself. And so that's just like kind of cleaning it up. But just it's going to be like that area is going to be a very intense industrial use, no doubt about it, not retail of any sort.
Councilmember Butterfield.
Well, we've had Catco out there, Thomas Tools, right? That's all retail. And if you blow up the map, we have a red one right there, Industrial Park. So we're spot zoned all over here already.
So I want to clarify, spot zoning is like in a particular instance is when like one property owner is kind of advocating for a rezone and like outside of the group. And so like what you would need is kind of like the surrounding property owners as a whole to all say like, okay, well, I think this makes sense as like the corridor and kind of fits in as part of the plan of like what we want to do. If like just one property owner is like, hey, I think my property works best in this setting or like with this district, can we do that just for my property alone? Then like, that's what we get.
Well, we have the thrift store out there now, and that's an industrial.
That's actually not you're not pointing at the thrift store. The red spot's not the thrift store.
No, I know that. The thrift store is right about here. Mm-hmm. And that's industrial.
So
And that's retail.
yeah, so I guess not like exclusively retail, but like what kind of mandates the industrial district is kind of like the scale of like the retail and like what's going to be going on. So like let's say there's like a rental construction company out there, and so like where you can like rent like the big machines, like the earth movers and things like that. Those things, even though that is like a retail aspect, the scale of the product that is being moved mandates like an industrial size lot, so it just kind of fits out there. And so there is like, I guess there's also like a print shop out there that has like a retail like aspect to it, but it's not just retail alone. There are retail things that fit inside the industrial park, and there are also things like no matter like not just the scale of what you're selling, but the content of what you're selling. Like if something is flammable or hazardous, then it has to go in the industrial park. So I guess like I misspoke when I said that if it's just like a retail, but there are certain aspects of retail that cannot go anywhere other than the industrial park. But like I said, this is going to be very intense industrial development.
Okay, I want to stay specific to the applicant's request. And the applicant's request is what I want us to talk about. Councilmember Rosk, followed by Plowman.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission and deny the rezone.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to deny the rezoning. Additional discussion. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I'd like to get into this a little bit further because I think there's some serious implications here, and that is we have a property owner, we have a potential business owner that's looking to do business in the city, and we're setting precedent for the future. And I think the decision that we make has to be steered a little bit by what got us here, and I'm just gonna go plain speak here. What happened? I mean, do we have a property owner that was trying to subvert process and procedure, or do we have a lapse in communication by staff, Or do we have a series of unfortunate events that just happen to find us here? Because each of those has their own implications in my mind. Because like I said, if the answer for any of those questions are different, or if they happen to be different things, then my opinion is going to lean just a little bit in a different direction. Because if the property owner, here's an example, if the property owner was unaware of the process to go through in which to do this, and was unaware of that because of some miscommunication from the city, then I do believe the city would hold a little bit of liability in that. However, if that was not the case, if the property owner knew what they were doing and decided to ignore the process and procedure and protocol for obtaining particular licensure, zone, other requirements, whatnot, that's a different implication altogether. So end result, what we're going to do as far as zoning and whatever, I don't even care about that right now. What I do care about is what got us here, because at the end of the day, there's real life implications for a family that's, I think, hoping to operate and run a business, and that has implications in their lives. So I'd like to figure out what happened, and not to assign blame, but to decide what to do.
Mr. Scott, can you help us out here a little bit with, I think you've been involved in this process just a bit, so can you kind of give us a synopsis on the questions that Councilmember Plowman is asking, and then give us some legal direction on how we need to proceed here?
Certainly, Mayor, Council. I was involved at one point. I think I had advised staff on whether it was appropriate to consider the variance given the statutory prohibition on use variances. But as far as the specific back and forth on the rezoning application, I have not been involved. But at any event, the council's really, the essence of the request before the council is to determine what set of rules apply to a specific property in the city. So you've got different rules for different zones. And currently under your zoning, you've zoned it for industrial. The request is being made that you change that zoning and adopt a different set of rules to apply, that being the general business zone rules. In considering this request, you're, even though you're considering a specific property, you're still acting in your sort of broadest authority with, you're making a legislative decision. You're making a policy decision, and it's really ultimately up to the council. What you should be asking yourselves, in my view, is whether the current zoning makes sense, whether it's logical, looking at things like your comprehensive plan, because the zoning ordinance is really just the instrument through which the city implements the policy decisions it made in adopting the comprehensive plan. And I believe, as the Planning and Development Director has explained, the comprehensive plan clearly marks this area as industrial. The only other property abutting it is the government district, and as Planning and Development Director Walker explained, that also in his view is probably just being held pending future industrial use. The other thing to consider, of course, is the Planning Commission's recommendation. The Planning Commission is the body that's charged most specifically with reviewing land use applications in light of the zoning ordinance, and particularly in light of the comprehensive plan. All that is not to say that it's impossible for the council to justify a decision to grant the rezoning. There could be circumstances, there could be changed circumstances, given the change to Highway 12, for example. But the council, again, has broad discretion to decide whether to approve the rezoning or not, or to deny it and to uphold the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, okay, I'll break it down a little bit further than that then. I fully understand the concept of zoning and what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it and the broad scope of that. Is there any evidence anywhere to suggest that anywhere along the line that the property owner attempted to do this in the correct way or the correct manner and was misinformed or erroneously given the direction that they could proceed in this manner by the city?
Yeah, so I'll answer like your last like 3 questions. So as far as like the I'll be careful to not say subvert. I think I'll lean on the optimistic side and say possibly did not know about like what like how the zoning or how the process could have gone. So I'll say that. I think on the city side, I think there was a point where there was just a period of not knowing that it was out there, and then it was brought to their attention, and then there was kind of a variance. Is this a conditional use permit? And I'll put that squarely on my predecessor. I think, unfortunately, that application was accepted by an intern, and so not on an intern, but yeah. So I think like in that process, I think that's, and then with the turnover of staff, just because on that, like it's mentioned, the staff member who was alleged to have forgotten the meeting did not accept the BZ, I guess did not accept the variance application and was not on staff yet. And so then was just kind of handed the project, and then that was when my predecessor resigned. And so then there was like this 3-month period of what was going on. And so so not subversion. And I will say on staff side, I think like the variance application wasn't valid, but had been consulted that it wasn't valid, so they knew. And then I think they found this process of like the map amendment, and then that was kind of like where we've kind of interjected into. And so then I think the final answer is that it is like a series of unfortunate events. I mean, there was like a lot of turnover, but none of that really kind of changes the fact that the zoning is the zoning. You know the zoning, and then I think also even if you don't know the zoning, that doesn't really change anything. I think it's a simple phone call. That I think, like I said, happens regularly across multiple zoning districts and happens a lot. So,
Okay, may I follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Question for Attorney Scott. Attorney Scott, if hypothetically, if a property owner was led to believe something or misled unintentionally, whatever, and subsequently incurred costs because of the misinformation, does the city have any kind of legal exposure because of that?
Councilmember Plowman, members of the council, I think that's it's a difficult question to answer in a hypothetical, but what I'll say is that everybody is kind of charged with the responsibility to know what the ordinances require, with knowing what the zoning regulations are for the property they either own or occupy before they put that property to a specific use. And furthermore, individual staff members, in the event they were to give some misinformation or inaccurate information unintentionally, which of course happens from time to time because everyone makes mistakes, does not have the ability to bind the city to that erroneous interpretation.
yeah, so I would say like to have like vested interests, like that would require like an approval from the planning commission and then a reversal on that to be like, no, well, even though we said you can do this, then you can't do this. That would be vested interests. And so moving your things in prior to contacting the city or being approved or being issued permits is not that, because that just kind of highlights the subversion of the process.
Okay, well then if I may make one final comment then. I guess the position that I personally, because I can't speak for anybody else at the council table, and I've spoken a lot, so I'll be done after this, but where I don't want to be is judge, jury, and executioner, in that if if an individual, if a property owner was led to believe that they could do something that they couldn't actually do, and then they ended up bearing expense, which maybe trickled down to other individuals, whatnot. I don't want to be the one bringing the hammer down because misinformation was handed out or because something was done incorrectly, misinformation was exchanged back and forth. Yeah, I just feel uncomfortable with the whole thing, whether or not it goes against the zoning policy or not. I don't know I don't know the communication. We don't know the back and forth of the communication that was had. And I think that, like I said, there's serious consequence for going one direction or another. And without knowing all of that, it's just a very uncomfortable thing for me.
Mr. Larson, either yourself or Mr. Roner, at any time was your client made aware that the city gave a nod that this may be an approved use?
Can we let Mr. Roner answer
It's up
that?
to you.
I bought that property about, I don't know, 30 years ago from,
I'm talking specifically, Mr. Roner, I'm talking specifically on the grocery store.
yeah, I bought that property from Janice Berquist. And when I bought it, it was a grocery store and a restaurant when I bought it. And so when the people come along that wanted to rent it from me and wanted to put a grocery store in there, I told them, I said, it was a grocery store when I bought it because I threw in all the old groceries because when the guy died, Gordy Berquist, when he died, well, then it just sat empty and all the groceries were old in the store. And then once I bought it, I ended up cleaning everything out and throwing it away. So it was a grocery store 30 years ago.
Okay.
And grocery store and restaurant. It was booths in there, and I ripped all the plumbing out and redid it. So
Thank you. Mr. Walker, was the city made aware of this request to have it a grocery store from Mr. Roner, or was it made aware of it from a state agency?
State agency.
And so the state agency contacted the city seeking clarification on the use.
Yeah, so the first contact about like the grocery store would have been to the past building official who was contacted by the Minnesota Department of Ag that there was a grocery store going up and that they had pending approval of the state. And that was the first time the building official had heard about it. There are no inspections on record, there are no permits on record, and there are no memos on record about the building official's opinion about the process.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? Just a minute.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Larson.
Mr. Walker says that there was no evidence of any authorization from the state.
No, that's not what he said. He said from the city.
I thought he said from the state.
No, he said that the state had contacted the city.
Yeah. Because the.
Is that what you
tenant-
said, Mr. Walker?
The city, yeah, there's no contact from the city.
Right.
city was notified by the state.
Right.
Because the state did issue a permit.
Yeah, we're aware of that. Yes. Yes. Point well made. Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I think I read in the minutes somewhere, and I just want to clarify, there's no temporary solution to this. I mean, they have a 2-year lease, and did I read somewhere that there was, like, there's no way to let them do this for 2 years and then...
No. There's not. There's
Okay.
not.
Councilmember Osmus, followed by Councilmember Butterfield.
Okay, I feel like there's still a question that hasn't been answered that Mr. Plowman was inquiring. As far as, did anybody from the city give the impression that there could or would be a zoning change, or whether or not the grocery store could be there? And the answer is no. If I understand it correctly, the city just accepted paperwork on a variance,
Yep.
which then was determined wasn't legal because we can't have a hearing on the variance for that property.
Correct.
So no city employee whether it was an intern or anybody else, gave any impression that they could go forward with a grocery store there.
No, all the communications show that it was going to be a process that hinged on pivotal decisions from voting bodies, being the planning commission or the council or the BZA.
Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yeah, Board of Zoning Appeals.
But earlier you had said that Mr. Ramstead may have given some direction. In your opening comments, you said something about Mr. Ramstead.
Yep, gave direction that there is processes that could make this happen as far as like there are like, but all of those things hinged on voting bodies. Not like this, you do this, then yes. So this would have to go to this body to vote on it, and then they'd have to go to this body to vote on it. Oh, well, we can't, that application doesn't work, try this applicant. No, and so it was that. All of those routes hinged on voting bodies, votes that he cannot guarantee.
Right. And, I mean, and I think the council knows that he said that on a pretty regular basis. You know, I mean, I had a lot of phone calls from developers that said, you know, Mr. Ramstead said that there is a possibility, and I would basically say, well, no, not really. But, you know, you can go to the council and ask him, but it's probably not going to get approved. But Councilmember Butterfield.
I just want to go back to Mr. Owner and get more detail on exactly when he bought it and every business that's been out there since he bought it.
Okay, hold on a minute. So how is that relevant to the question?
Because we're going to find out if it's been industrial or it's been retail for 30, 40 years.
Okay, Mr. Rowan,
I bought the property, I don't know.
go to the mic, please. I'm sorry. Mr. Larson, is it okay for? Okay,
Yeah, I bought the property, like I said, about 30 years ago, and I rented it to Thomas Tools. They sold drills and different little things in there, and they were retail, and they were in there for 17 years. And then I rented it to Ziegler Cat, and they were in there for, I believe, 3.5 years. And then there was other little retail stores in there in between, selling different little things too, but no food.
but you had a church in there for a while too, right?
Yeah, I had a church in there too.
Ms. Valiant. Mr. Robert. Mr. Scott.
So, yeah,
Mr.
Mayor,
Robert, yeah, that's pretty heavy.
there's a lot going on. I'm trying to just maybe assist the council in focusing what you're being asked. There are protections in law, you should know. If the property is legally used for one use, retail, restaurant, whatever it might be, and the city changes the zoning or the property comes into this, I mean, whatever the zoning regulations change, there are protections in the law that would allow the use that's legally in existence at the time of that change to continue. But those protections expire if the use lapses for a year or more. So I think there are legal non-conforming use protections. They do not appear to be at issue here. So what you're really being asked again is to make a legislative determination about whether you think the comprehensive plan and the zoning, which are both for industrial in this area, should change for this property. And again, you can find that there are reasons to make that change. You should explain why they are in light of the city's policy and the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so what we're being asked in the motion that is on the floor is to deny the application for this to be rezoned. Motion has been made and it's been seconded. Council, I'm ready to take the vote. Are you ready to take the vote?
Yes.
Roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Abstain.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Nay.
Osk.
Aye.
The motion,
4 ayes, 1 nay, 1 abstain.
that motion passes. So the request to rezone has been denied. And I encourage you to work with staff, and I know Mr. Walker and his staff will work with you to do everything they can to help you as however we can to move this forward, okay? So at this point, you've came to the highest legislative body within the city. and we have denied that, the use. So, okay, thank you. Next, we have consideration of acceptance for project number 1904, path improvements and authorized final payments. Mr. Vogie, our interim city engineer.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The item before you this evening is the final project approval for the shared use path project. As you'll note in the council action request, the project final total did come in below the budgetary estimates, and we are recommending approval of this project, and as a result, the final payment in the amount of $19,040.79.
So move.
Motion been made and seconded to approve final payment. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Osk. Oh, Butterfield, sorry.
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have consideration of airport automatic weather observation station and professional services work order number 4 with Bolton and Mink.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the time. I'll be quick for you here. Just a little bit of history. When the new airport was built, the AWOS, or Automated Weather Observation System, was moved from the old airport to the new airport, located in a spot which was approved by the FAA, and life went on. That unit has now reached the end of its age of life. We have had some issues with the ceilometer, the measurement for how high the clouds are off the ground, which you can imagine can lead to some issues. In fact, Part 135, we have a freight carrier that comes in typically 6 days a week. They can't actually start the approach without a visibility or without the appropriate visibility for the approach. So this is an important part of the airport. When MnDOT came to us last fall with some dollars to put a new AWOS system in, it should have been a plug and play. We just put it in its spot and it's good to go, except since we built the airport, the FAA changed the regulations for the siting of AWOS locations, and ours no longer meets the requirements. So that's a long way of saying we have to move it in order to get the free AWOS from MnDOT. We have to move the site. And of course, that takes some engineering. It's some pretty husky footings, and then we've got to get power to this new site. So there's a drawing included with the packet that shows where we would put it on the north side of the runway. This would also take into consideration potentially eventually expanding the runway by 1,000 feet to the northwest, and would be a spot that will fit the current FAA requirements for our airport now and our future plans. I can't speak to whether or not the FAA will change the siting requirements again, but this is where we would have to put it for now. So what you see before you is a request to enter into a contract with Bolton and Mink for engineering and site work services. The estimate there of about a $70,000 project, and $21,000 of local funds. Do you have any questions for me?
Council, what are your wishes?
I'd move to approve the request.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consideration of airport automatic weather observation station professional services work. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes. Next, you have the next one on the agenda as well, which is airport apron expansion project and authorized advertisement for bids.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, you'll recall I was here about a month ago, actually exactly 28 days ago, because 28 days in February. And we were thankful to get approval to put the bid documents together. This is the next step in the process. The bid documents are almost 100% complete. Those are really based on FAA requirements for this ramp expansion. The big thing that is in front of you here that has changed slightly, and I did mention it when I was here a month ago, but the numbers. So if we go to the just the bottom of the car form there, because of the slightly larger ramp, as the individual intends to build a slightly larger hangar than we were expecting, the numbers went up a bit. My guess with some really quick country math was 80,000. I was off by about $1,600, it looks like. So if you look at the current engineer's estimate, the numbers there, just to kind of point that out, typically this would be 90% federal, a 5% state, and then a 5% local match. What you see for those numbers that are just a little bit different has to do with an area between the hangar and the federally funded portion of the ramp, which is funded at a state level, and that's 80-20. And that's why those numbers get a little bit goofy there. So the individual building the hangar will build a portion of that apron in front of the hangar, and we will meet up with that out in front. So that's the request here would be to approve those bid documents and allow us to go out to bid. The time frame here again is the issue. We're kind of backing up from an April 11th federal grant deadline, and we'd like to open bids on March 30th. And in order to do that, we'd like to advertise starting the Wilmer paper on Saturday and then online availability next Wednesday, I believe are the right dates. And this will be a good project. I look forward to some great bids on this, but that's the action requested would be to approve that resolution for final plans and specification, allowing us to advertise for bids.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the airport apron expansion project and authorize advertisements for bids. Councilmember Osmus.
Just remind me, is this budgeted? How are we paying for it?
Yeah, so we have in our CIP, actually was in the 2021 CIP for some apron expansion, also some gates at the Malzer and the VOR, and that total number was about $137,000. I double checked with Steve earlier today. And so both of these projects are slightly different than we had planned on that CIP, but we didn't have these as options when we had set that CIP money out. So it is earmarked already. It just a slight shift in how we're going to use that money.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good time to highlight the project or bring it back around because I did have a couple of questions and a couple of comments from people in the community. We have a project total here of about almost $1.2 million. But this is specifically with regards to the apron expansion itself. And the question that was relayed to me in a few different ways is, why is the city giving $1.2 million to somebody for free? And I politely tried to explain why that is not the case, but I thought, well, if there are some individuals that are under that impression falsely, then maybe it's a good opportunity to bring some clarification that this portion of the project, this is not the total of the investment being spent out here and the totality of the entire project. So maybe if you could just super brief synopsis just to enlighten the community again.
I absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Plowman. It's hard for me to be brief. I really like airplanes and airports, so I'll try. The project ahead of us, really kind of a once-in-a-lifetime project, will be to construct a 147 by 125-foot steel frame building with 33-foot sidewalls on the main ramp at the Wilmer Municipal Airport. This will be used to store a business aircraft that is currently on the field, hopefully a larger business aircraft in the near future, and also have space for us as the fixed base operator and the city of Wilmer, if you will, to lease space to transient aircraft. Now, I want to clarify just quickly, the city of Wilmer does not provide hangar leasing services, and that's why we have a fixed base operator that insulates the city, and the city doesn't want to get involved with that on any way, shape, or form. But it provides an opportunity for us to have an airport amenity that we currently don't have. Because of the size of this hangar, we could, if you've been out to the airport, we could literally put the FBO hangar on wheels and drive it into this new hangar. This is the size of building we're talking about. The door is big enough. This is a big building that will be well used on the airport. Because of the size of the building, it then kicks us back to our airport master plan, which we've just updated. We're still waiting for final FAA approval on that. We have been since 2018. However, it has been updated and it shows us expanding this ramp out. In order to be eligible for federal funds, we have to have a couple things. Number one, we have to be in good standing with the FAA. We have to meet the grant assurances that we've already agreed to at the airport. We also have to have justification to spend those funds. So you have to have a triggering event. So in this case, I couldn't come to you and say, I want to expand the ramp to the tune of $1.2 million, because if we do, somebody might build a hangar. The FAA would say, no, you don't have the justification. We won't give you the federal dollars for that. But in this case, with the hangar being built there, that triggers that justification piece and then allows us to access that federal pool of money funded by mostly the Jet A fuel tax, jet fuel tax, and allows us to bring that 90% funding to the city of Wilmer. So we get this $1.2 million ramp expansion at a cost of about $81,000 to the city. The truth is, the total project, the hangar and associated concrete, probably $2.5 million. That's a rough guess on my part. So a total project of $3.6 or $3.7 million to the city for our investment of $81,000. So in my opinion, a really very good deal. Again, I'm kind of an airport homer. The rest of that story is this ramp is not private. It is a public use. It's a taxi lane. It's parking spaces and will be used by anyone that comes to the airport. And so it just so happens that on the back side of it, if you will be this giant hangar that is owned by a business. But the rest of this ramp area that we are proposing is all very public and actually is required by those grant assurances to remain open to anybody to use. So I hope that was maybe longer than you wanted, but that's as quick as I can be.
Perfect, thank you.
I think another important thing to add is that this is an amenity that we currently don't have. And when Councilmember Plowman was telling me about this a couple months ago, I had a personal experience. My father passed away, and we were trying to find a place to get his airplane within a hangar, and we didn't have anything. This would have afforded us to be able to place that airplane within a hangar. The other thing is that, as you said, for basically $83,000, we're getting about a $3.5 million project that is being funded by private local funds. So this, I've had a number of people talk to me about it as well, and everybody says, sign that as fast as you can, Mr. Mayor. When it comes across your desk, sign it right away, because this is a win-win for the city. So thanks to the airport for their vision, and also thanks you, Eric, for your vision. So just in the comments or questions. Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
and get building.
You bet. Thank you all.
You bet. Next, we have consideration of grant application 2022, Department of Natural Resources, Glacial Lake State Trailhead Improvements near the Civic Center. Mr. Baumgartner, our Park and Rec Director.
Mayor, member of the council, I'm going to talk to you about the DNR Regional Trail Grant application. The motion tonight will be to recommend to adopt a resolution approving the application for the 22 Department of Natural Resources Trail Grant application. I just want to clarify something in the overview. We'll be applying for up to $150,000, and then the $50,000 that we have in our CIP right now would get us up to that $200,000. So That's what the grant would be for 150 and then the $50,000 that we have in our CIP. Currently at the trailhead right now, basically it's a gravel parking lot. There's no other amenities there besides the bike rack and the fix-it station. So our recommendation is going to be to apply for this grant, to put a bathroom facility in there as a phase, a shelter, outdoor shelter, and additional parking lot. Now, this will probably take a couple years to get this done. The maximum dollar amount that we can receive from this grant is $250,000. I've had conversations with the DNR. They understand where we're at with our trailhead, having 3 links to it with the Glacial Ridge, the Wilmer Trail, and the Eagle Lake. It's a very nice trail to update that we need to have some updates to it. So we're just looking for the recommendation from the council to apply for the grant.
Could you close the computer, please?
Yes.
Council, what are your wishes?
I'd make a motion to recommend, to adopt a resolution approving the application of the 2022 Department of Natural Resources Trail Grant application.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Take whichever one you want. Discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have consideration of advertising agreement with Wilmer Baseball Association at Swanson Field. Mr. Baumgartner.
Mayor, member of the council, tonight the recommendation to the council is to adopt a resolution for the agreement with the Wilmer Baseball Association for advertising rights at the Swanson Field Complex. This is our 4th year of working with the Baseball Association. I'm sure if you drove by there on, miss the road here because it's Wilmer Avenue?
Yep.
Yeah, Wilmer Avenue, thank you. That you'll see it on the green field, the blue field, and actually when you drive into the LC Clemenson field. With the constructions going on now, they may not be able to put the banners up on the Clemenson field yet, but they'll be putting it onto the blue and green field. Eventually, what we would like to do is work with them to have a longer lease agreement with them. I'm thinking that they're going to be wanting to expand to similar to what the Stingers have down on Baker Field. So the Park and Rec Board has recommended this motion, and it's to you as council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve advertising agreement with the Wilmer Baseball Association at Swanson Field. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have consideration of state temporary liquor permit for Foxhole Brewhouse. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Foxhole Brewhouse has plans to sell alcohol during the Lakeland Broadcasting Spring Home and Outdoor Living Expo on April 1st and 2nd of 2022. And they have made application for a 1-day to 4-day temporary on-sale liquor license, and it's staff's recommendation to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve temporary liquor permit for Foxhole Brewhouse. Discussion. So do they need to have a catering license if they're doing it at the Civic Center?
They're separate because they are a brewery, so there's different rules on them.
Okay. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have consideration of a revised comprehensive assessment policy. Ms. Valiant and our city attorney, Mr. Scott.
I'll just turn it over to Robert right away.
Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We were asked probably a couple months ago now to review the city's special assessment policy. We've worked since then with City Administrator Valiant as well as Jared Vogie from Bolton and Mank to go through the policy and identify areas where it could be improved. And what we really were focusing on, as stated in the council action request, is one, to make sure that the policy, which hadn't been updated in some time, was consistent with all the legal requirements for the city before it can impose a special assessment,
Specifically, what you'll see multiple instances throughout the policy revisions in your packet today are references to the special benefit test, where for most assessments, the city is unable, as a matter of constitutional law, to impose a special assessment of greater value than the special benefit to the property. And the special benefit to the property really means the market value increase in the property attributable to the improvements for which the assessment is imposed. That was not explicitly stated previously, so we are updating the language throughout the policy to make that clear. We are also trying to bring the policy more into line with existing city practices. One example there is the previous policy had rather rigid and specific percentages for each project that would end up being assessed. And a couple issues there. One is you're still limited by the special benefit principle on all those assessments, no matter what your policy says. And secondly, the council is able, as a matter of its discretion at any given project, to make a judgment on what the really the expected market value increase for any project would be to the benefited properties, and make a judgment call as far as how much of any given project should be paid for out of the city's portion, so out of the public funds at large, versus assessed specifically to benefited properties. So we're both trying to bring the policy in line with legal requirements as well as with practices the city was already following because it had to. Another improvement we tried to make with these edits was to streamline and clarify the city's process for deferred assessments. There are several types of deferred assessments under different circumstances. One would be for economic hardship for specific categories of property owners. Another would be for unimproved property or agricultural property. There were references to the various types scattered throughout the policy. We've now eliminated each of those specific sections because it was leading to confusion about what processes would be followed, what interest rate would be imposed, when would interest be collected, would interest be collected at all. We've tried to now modify that, improve it, clarify it, and put it all into one section at the end of the policy. We're pretty closely with City Clerk Thompson on this. There have been a few issues recently where property owners with deferred assessments were surprised at how interest was calculated when they sought to satisfy those assessments, usually in connection with the sale of the property. So by improving and clarifying the language in this policy, we're hoping that any of those instances where there's been confusion can be avoided going forward. The fourth category of changes we made to this policy was, I would characterize as trying to narrow the scope of the policy and really have the policy address the specific issue of what types of projects will the city consider special assessments to fund, and what's the method the city will follow, and what principles will the city adhere to in calculating those assessments. The policy as it exists goes beyond that. It has language in there kind of specifying how the city will pay for the city share of projects, whereas I think the city would like to keep all options on the table for that, whether you're going to bond for it, can pursue grants for it, other internal budget amendments you might make. So we're really trying to narrow the focus of it. And then probably the biggest issue in that last category would be removing specific provisions in this policy that we're applying to new developments. So in other words, this policy went into some depth about exactly how assessments would be calculated for public infrastructure needed to serve new developments. And some of that language is not consistent with city ordinances the city has adopted since this policy was most recently revised. And beyond that, I think there's more work to be done. I know I've talked to City Engineer Bogey about this, as well as City Administrator Valiant, to review all of the city's policies and codes that apply to new development and make sure they are consistent and kind of up to date, reflecting the best practices. The one example there is, for most cases, what the city is going to want to do for a new project is, if there's public infrastructure needed to serve it, that should be paid for and possibly even constructed, if it's within the development property, by the developer upfront and not constructed by the city and assessed. And then you would enter into a development agreement with the developer that specifies the terms and conditions for all that work. So you don't want to have a policy that ties your hands. My last observation is, there is language in this policy. It is a policy. There are sometimes specific circumstances that come up that require the city to deviate from that policy. Your existing policy included language that allowed the city to do that if unique circumstances presented themselves. That language will remain in the policy, but we just hope we have to rely on it a lot less. So I would certainly recommend that the council consider approving these amendments. If there are any specific questions about any of the language you see in your packet, I'd be happy to try and answer them. And certainly if there are any issues, or if the council has pause with any of the changes, we could take direction from the council, try and address those concerns and come back at the next meeting.
Well, thank you both for working on this so diligently. It's something that I've wanted to have done for, I think, probably the last 3 city administrators. I asked for to get it done, along with asking council on numerous occasions to review this. So it's nice to see we're getting this done. So, council, what are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised comprehensive assessment policy.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Does any council members have any community pride announcements? Seeing and hearing none, we'll stand adjourned.